Hi students and happy Thursday. This video is a mid-week check-in video in which we'll review some items that we didn't have time to go over during class. The semester had to be shortened a little bit due to COVID-19, so our time together is already flying. That's why each Thursday I'll be making one of these little videos. Now, I don't want to take up too much time, so let's get to it. First, let me start off by saying thank you to those of you that make time to watch these videos and to watch all the other videos that I post. I will be posting these particular ones so that you're empowered and equipped to get through each week and finish the class successfully. So if you know someone that might be tempted to skip these videos and you have their contact info, please tell them to watch. Or if they're busy, you can tell them to pop in their earphones and just get an earful of whatever it is I'm going to be talking about. Because the bottom line is that I want you guys to try to fit this into your schedules so that you're able to do what needs to be done so that you can pass the class. Now that I've gotten that public service announcement about accountability partners out of the way, let's talk about this week. We have 5 items to go over. The first is what's due by next Tuesday's class. The second item is the midterm. Yes, I said midterm, which is crazy. Next, we'll talk about the textbook issues some of you are continuing to have. And we'll also discuss an upcoming UDC system outage and its implications for this weekend and the office hours that I have scheduled. And lastly, we'll finish up by talking again about the classroom on Blackboard and how it's set up. The first thing on our agenda is what's due this week. For this week's homework, which is ironic to say because everything's homework, but in any event, for this week's homework, we are going to be doing a couple of things that can be found in the syllabus, which has been revised to include a course schedule that has the assignments for each week, as well as the readings that are due, and any other information that you'll need to be able to keep track of what's going on, even if you're unable to log into class for technical reasons or for any other reason. As someone who teaches first year seminar, I just have to put in this plug. It is an essential thing to do every week, checking the syllabus. You should do it as often as possible, just because in case your teacher is someone who is making changes, because teachers do have the right, or it's reasonable sometimes to change the syllabus based on what's going on in the class or what students might need, some gaps that the teacher might uncover by doing diagnostic activities to see where students are. They might see that they need to change things. So it's always important to keep track of that syllabus. The syllabus is basically your map for the class, and every teacher appreciates a student who has read the syllabus and maybe asks a question based on what they've read, as opposed to a student that is coming to them asking questions about things that are in the syllabus that they didn't look at in the first place. So that's my public service announcement about that. And now we're going to take a look at what is actually in the schedule, one of which is the journal and other assignments, which by the way can be found in the assignments tab here. In looking at our course schedule, you can see that for week 2, we've got the journal response, narrative, descriptive. You have a reading quiz, and I want you to begin Essay 1, Rough Draft Part 1. And also, since we did not really discuss the homework, I still would like you to try your hand at the disability thesis and draft outline based on all of the ideas that you came up with. So I'm going to talk about what each of those assignments entails in just a few moments here. For the journal, what you're going to do is there's a handout that explains exactly what the assignment entails for all of the journaling. But for this specific week's prompts, what you'll want to do is look here. So you're going to pick one of the following 3 prompts. So you don't have to answer all of them, you just pick one. And then in a paragraph or 2, you're going to write about that prompt. And I would like you to focus on answering it completely and also on making sure that each of your paragraphs contains at least 3 to 5 sentences. Also, you want to make sure that when you're writing your paragraphs, you're not putting them in just one giant macro paragraph, but hitting the return key so that they're separated. It's not really a big deal in a certain way. It's not really a big deal, but in a technical way, it can potentially hurt your grade if you don't separate your paragraphs when you're doing a paper for like a test that you have to submit. So that is what I want you to do for the journaling, and the rubric is also found below. So the way that this is being graded is based on the depth of the reflection, meaning, how thoughtful are you in writing this? The way that you use language, the length of your each of your paragraphs, which means that you should have at least three complete sentences per paragraph. So a complete sentence means you have a predicate in your sentence, meaning someone doing an action or something doing an action, and then a verb. If you don't have a someone or something doing an action and a verb, it's not a complete sentence. And then the last thing is also related to the grammar. And that means that you're making sure you have complete sentences, you're making sure you're using spell check. I'm not looking for perfect grammar, but certainly if it's something that spell check or Grammarly can pick up, I would not like to see it. That would make me feel sad face. And then here's some checklists that you can use to just sort of help you further make sure that you're following the requirements that are set forth in this grading rubric. So that is that assignment, and it is again found under the assignments tab. This week, as explained, you guys are going to have your first reading quiz. And for the reading quizzes, the way it works is that you're going to choose one of the readings in the week's chapters from the textbook. Then you're going to indicate which of those you chose. That's going to be one of the questions in the quiz. Then you're going to choose 3 questions, and you're going to answer each of those 3 questions about the text that you chose to write about. So when you answer those questions, your answers are going to need to be at least 2 complete sentences in length. So for this week, the options are fish cheeks, student case study, a field observation, black men in public space, my summer scooping ice cream, arm wrestling with my father. In terms of the quizzes and their questions, they're going to be about it's going to be directly related to the questions inside of the chapter. So you get to pick your source that you're going to use to talk about. You get to pick the questions that you choose, and then I'm just going to review it based on how completely you answer the questions and how thoroughly what you're writing reflects that you read the selection that you chose. Last class, we had discussed the 4 steps to creating a thesis. We didn't get to fill out the worksheet that I wanted to do, so what I want you to do is, based on your reading of disability, complete the 4 steps by thinking about that question and the various themes that you guys came up with and the various ideas that stuck out to you, and you're going to just create your own thesis. And that thesis is basically the outline for the rest of your paper, as we discussed, because that is going to tell your reader where you're going to take this entire paper. This is not a full-fledged outline, but I at least want you to create a thesis, because once you have a thesis, you basically have the structure of an outline. And the document can be found that you're going to use right here. If you click on it, it'll download, and it's a fillable Word document. And what you can do is first ask yourself a question about the topic. So that's the step 1. So if you recall, in disability, the author talks about the way that people with disabilities are seen by each other, seen by other people. She also uses sarcasm in an interesting way. So ask yourself a question about the topic that might be interesting. So for example, you can say, how was sarcasm used? How did the author use language? How is it true? Is her statement true that people who are not currently disabled are only temporarily abled? Pick any of those things that stand out and ask yourself a question. Then based on that question, you say either yes, you agree, or no, you don't agree, but without saying yes or no. So you say the author uses sarcasm to do blank, or the author does not use sarcasm to do blank. Whatever position you're taking about anything, you make that a statement. Because ultimately, when you're writing a paper like these ones, you are standing as if you are the subject matter expert. You're the go-to person that knows all about this topic. So you're not asking questions. You're not guesstimating. You are the end-all, be-all, know-it-all when it comes to this topic. Next, you're going to list 3 reasons that support your declarative statement. So now that you've said the author does blank to achieve this, or the author doesn't do this to achieve this, and or the author is correct in saying this or not correct in saying this. And you say the first reason is blank, the next reason is blank, and the third reason is blank. Lastly, you combine everything that you wrote in here with what you wrote in here, and then that will give you your thesis. So if I said the author is correct in saying blank because of because of blank, 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 and blank evidence. Since all I said was blank, that's why I'm just writing it that way. But you get the idea. Basically, you're filling that in with what you're going to put it together as your thesis, and pretty much that's where your paper is going to hang on, and that's why I want you to practice this. Now that we've talked about what's due this week, let's talk about planning for the future, and that involves talking about another thing that's coming up, which is the midterm and the instructions for that assignment. In Blackboard's under assignments, you'll be able to see the midterm essay. At this stage, I can't believe we're talking about the midterms, but it is what it is. Just because the semester is shorter, we are having to kind of push forward quicker than we normally would without having, put in more foundational work. But nonetheless, this is where we are. So the midterm this semester is an exemplification essay. Now, by definition, this kind of paper is what you're going to see in most of your college writing, and it's a kind of argumentation that uses specific evidence to prove a point. That is basically the whole point of that four-step table that we are doing, or four-step process to creating an essay. Thesis that we're doing. And that is why it's so important to learn that, because this is basically where you're going to be writing for most of your college essays, unless you're doing some creative writing, or maybe even some technical writing of a particular type, like if you have to write a manual or something. Now, there are 6 student learning outcomes for the semester. I'm not going to go over all of them, but basically for this paper, you're going to be pushing it to the limit and doing all of them. And what specifically you're going to do is you're going to use 3 to 5 relevant sources to write a 3 to 5 page essay based on a social issue of your choice. Now, we say 3 to 5 pages, we mean 3 to 5 double space pages. And so when you single space that's really 1.5 pages if it's 3 pages, or 2.5 pages if it is 5 pages. So you're writing anywhere from 3 to 5 pages. I don't really want you to write too much more, because I do want you to get used to writing exactly based exactly on the instructions. So not 2.5 pages, but 3 pages. Not 5.5 pages, but 5 pages. So try your best to stick to those criteria. In terms of how you'll be graded on the thesis. So that thesis paper that we use should come in handy. It will be graded on the evidence you provide to prove that thesis. It'll be graded on how you summarize what you are putting together so that the arguments are clear. And then you'll be using transitional words and other things to make it clear, not clear, but rather a smooth transition from one idea to the other, so that it flows, because the more it flows, it's easier for the reader to get a better idea of where you're going with it. And the length should be of the correct length. The grammar, the voice, and the sentence structure should all be solid. In terms of length, my biggest thing to remember is that any paragraph you put down should have at least 3 sentences. No paragraph should have 2 sentences. I don't want to see 2-sentence paragraphs. It should have at least 3 sentences. It can be longer than that, but it should have at least 2 sentences. Another thing to mention is that ideally you would want to make sure that you have 3 sources. If you're writing a 3-page paper, you should have at least 3 sources. If you're writing a 5-page paper, you should have at least 5 sources. That's just a general rule of thumb. And then when you're picking a social issue, think of something that is, again, what we went over last time we met on Tuesday. It shouldn't be too broad. It shouldn't be something that's indefensible, something that's like, a vague thing people say, like, besides generalizations, like, every single person in America is brilliant and talented. That's not something we can necessarily prove. So pick something that you can prove, or if you can't prove it for sure, if it's something, at least it should be something that you can argue. And people would say, okay, well, that's a possible argument. It shouldn't be something that can, it should be something that's relatively valid as an idea. And you can use current events. There are so many things going on in the world. You can definitely use various current events. The main thing that I would ask is, that you just really consider the ideas that we discussed last class about how to make sure that whatever topic you're using fits within something that's possible to write about. So for your homework, this is not a full homework assignment, but what I want you to do is start thinking about the idea, the general idea that you would want to have as the central, topic for your midterm essay. It doesn't necessarily have to be where you complete that whole 4-step process yet. But if you do want to do that, that's absolutely fine. If you want to pass it by me before, even we meet next time and start working on it more, that's absolutely fine. Because I guess the sooner you get it done, as far as the thesis, the sooner you can start working on this midterm, which is coming due pretty quickly, which is crazy. We finished up what's due and the midterm instructions, so let's talk about the textbook issues some of you are still having. With the ongoing access issues everyone is going through with the ebooks this semester, the university has put out some additional information about who to contact. And in addition to that, I also want to give you some things that I would recommend that you try and get situated. The very first thing is you'll need to be able to access My UDC. So if you can't get into your email or Blackboard, it is imperative that you contact UDC IT ASAP. So basically I'm fixing these Blackboard access issues right on this slide. It is especially necessary for those doing this 8-week classes for education or anybody else doing a shorter class, just because at this stage, the teachers will expect you to be working out those problems. You do not want to start your next class having to explain to the teacher why the issues weren't fixed in the first part of the 17 weeks. Plus, with this being a virtual semester, you'll just have an easier go of it if you get all those kinks worked out as soon as possible. And in general, most teachers and instructors are not going to look for alternate ways for you to get work done. That's just the reality of it. So I would 100,000% recommend that you complete those troubleshooting steps as soon as possible. Do what you have to do it as many times as you have to as far as calling UDCIT, but just get it done because it'll make your life easier and it'll also make you more likely to be able to be successful moving forward. The next thing that is actually related to what the university said about the books is the Brightwave. So you'll want to check your UDC email for messages from Brightwave, spelled Brytewave. The steps for how to do that are in the video linked below, but the short version is that you'll search for an email from Brightwave, and after you've searched for that email, what you'll want to do is you will look for their little link in that email and you'll follow that link, and then once you follow the link you can either reset the password or you can just log in using the temporary password they gave. I would recommend just resetting it so that you're not using a temporary password as your permanent password. I'm not sure if they automatically prompt you to use reset the password, but I would just start off with resetting and saying forgot password. Once logged in, you should see info about the books UDC purchased, and you should be able to read and activate text from there. But if that doesn't work for you, you'll need to contact the general UDC bookstore email address. They can be reached at 0742txt@follett.com. So that is a number 0 at the beginning. So it's 0742txt@follett.com. You can also email the bookstore manager, and I'm going to try to say this and hopefully not butcher it, but it's jhorvatinovich@follett.com. That's J, H as in Henry, O as in Oscar, R as in Robert, V as in Victor, ATINOVICH@follett.com. And on to the fourth item, which is the upcoming system outage for all the UDC systems. The UDC system is going through some serious overhauling. So all weekend up to 6 p.m. Sunday, the systems will be down. That means there's no myudc.edu, and that means that you're not going to have access to your UDC email. You're not going to have access to Blackboard or any of the other tools that you use through myudc. That also means that my office hours are not going to be able to be done through Blackboard. So go ahead and contact me by phone this Saturday, and then we can see from there whether or not any other system or tool will be useful for doing office hours. And I'll just do it by case basis in light of how each person would prefer to meet with me. Wow, time sure does fly when you're having fun and sticking to an agenda with cartoon school supplies on it, am I right? Let's talk about our final item, which is an oldie but goodie, the Blackboard Classroom. As a recap and a reminder, there is an update to the orientation to the course. It is now a video that I have made available just to make sure this material is more reflective of what we're doing this term as opposed to what was done for this class in previous terms. So I do apologize for any confusion with that. Please go ahead and watch the video. That also provides information about how to do the books. So I would definitely take the time to go ahead and watch that video. Another thing that I wanted to note is that the syllabus is, I did note it earlier, but the syllabus has been revised with the schedule, and it is here. Two other things to mention, or really it's one thing, it's all related. The blogs and ideas to share have the various descriptions of the assignments in here. And I just want to make sure that nobody is doing both the blog and a journal and a Flipgrid. You pick only one a week. So you don't do more than one, you just do one. Because if you look at them, all the answers are the questions are exactly the same. So for example, the narrative, it's the exact same one. The reflective journal, it's the exact same. Every single activity says the same. It says the same description. So you definitely don't want to, do the same thing more than once. And then another thing is that I did add the Flipgrid, and a Flipgrid is basically the same idea. You just join it with whatever program you want to use, and you answer the question. And this time, rather than just writing the answer, you can actually make a little video, and just to make it more interactive and more fun and more interesting. It's another way you can submit your stuff as a video journal. And I would ask that if you do a Flipgrid one week, the next week you do either a blog or a written journal, because I do want everybody to take some time to write something. Those are just the things that I wanted to mention about the changes to the class overall. And if you have questions about navigating, let me know. And I did try to clarify some of these sections. So it clearly says share your reflections on camera, private reflections, ideas to share, blogs. So if you're trying to do the journals, it's clearly a journal. This is clearly a blog, and this is clearly a Flipgrid, just to make it a little bit more user-friendly to navigate. So I hope that helps. I almost forgot to mention something. You can also view the weekly recordings right here through our classroom, and I'm going to show you how to do that. If you click on the WebEx Join Class Office Hours, and then click on this link, as if you're joining a class, yes, I know. You're going to click on virtual meetings, and you can look at the past meetings, and you can also view the recordings that they've made available. As of right now, the 9/8 one is the only one available, but as they become available, they should pop up here. On another note, something else I almost forgot to mention is that I've also added the link for attendance tracking through Easy Check right here, because I know some people were having problems with that. And so what you would do is when the meeting starts during class, you would enter whatever the code is that the teacher has provided, or that's on the screen. So our last one was 5747. You would then log in everything that you'd put in, and put the session ID again. So this number, you'd put it in again, and then you'd hit sign up. And then from there, you'd follow whatever instructions, and you'd be good to go. Thanks so much for watching this week's video. I look forward to working together next week, Tuesday, and also to reading all of your new submissions. And as a heads up, I will be continuing to grade whatever you received and will be getting that back to you over the next several days. It might take longer than I expected. But anyways, I am really excited about the products I've been receiving so far. Thank you so much and have a great rest of your day and a great weekend.